I was keeping a reclusive, gloomy, and disabled human. He only ever clung to his cat and didn't like to socialize with people, which made this cat worry every day. To help him fit in better, I became human to be by his side. But it seemed he didn't like me as much anymore. He stopped kissing and hugging me, and it had been a long time since he'd called me baby. Until one night at a party, I couldn't stop my cat tail from appearing. Panicked, I plopped right onto his lap, wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, and tried to shrink into his embrace. I squeezed out a tiny whisper in his ear, "Julian, my tail is coming out." The man in the wheelchair tightened his hand on my waist, his expression cold as he left the table, as if he were going to dispose of some unwanted trouble. But then in a small stall, he gently but firmly kneaded my tail and praised me in a husky, smiling voice. "So amazing, baby." In the circle my human belonged to, there was a strange kind of subordinate relationship called being kept. A young man told me this. He had come to my estate as a guest, following another male human. He found me napping among the flowers and just started unloading on me. He had a round, pale face. Though not as handsome as my human and much chattier, he gave a decent massage. As the head of this household, I figured I could show a little tolerance. "Mr. Evans says in their circle they don't call it boyfriend, they call it being kept." He lowered his eyes sadly as he said this, his hands slowing down. "I'm just a little lover he keeps." I shouldn't hope for more. A cat couldn't understand, but humans were always strange. This cat chose to be respectful. Perhaps being kept wasn't a happy business. He looked so sad. Considering he was a guest in my home, and possibly a stray human from the outside, it was a bit pathetic. I decided to mercifully lick the back of his hand as a sign of comfort. Before my tongue could touch him, I heard my human's voice from behind him. "Sonny." Although his tone was normal, I could tell from the slight emphasis on the first word that he was displeased. I immediately sprang up from the ground and darted to his feet. Sigh. My human was wonderful in every way, except he was too sensitive and got jealous at the drop of a hat. He needed his cat to soothe him constantly. He was lucky he had a good cat like me. What other cat would raise a human with such delicate care? I knew a big orange Tom who lived in a terrifying giant cage with many humans. There were more people than cats in there, so many of them were wild humans without a cat of their own. With a flick of his paw, a whole crowd of them would rush to offer him treat sticks. He showered his affection everywhere and never committed to any of them. A notorious heartbreaker. This cat was a little envious, but this cat wouldn't say it. After all, this cat had been foolishly tricked into a binding relationship with this human in his youth. Since I had given him my name, I had to take responsibility. I sighed behind his back, resigned. I forced out a few saccharine meows that made my own fur stand on end. As expected, a glimmer of pride appeared in my human's eyes, and he lifted me onto his lap, my poor human. He couldn't walk or crawl, only confined to 2 large wheels. I didn't know how he survived his cub years to live this long. Life without a cat to rely on must have been hard. Even though he had his flaws, this cat didn't care. He was my favorite human, and I would take very good care of him. Mr. Sterling, the human who had been talking to me, stood up, looking at us helplessly. My human nodded at him and said, "CEO Evans is looking for you." The young man scurried away. Seeing me watch him leave, my human got upset again. "You like him that much, you even let him pet you. Raising a human isn't easy. A cat can only sigh." I had to turn to face him and nuzzle my head into his chest. Though my human was petty, he was easy to coax. He scratched my chin and grumbled with feigned disgust. "You're covered in dust and you still jump on me." With that, the big wheels started moving, carrying my human and me toward the house. Perhaps the young man's words left an impression on me. For the next few days, as I patrolled my territory, I kept hearing humans chattering like little mice, always mentioning that word. Kept, so-and-so's kept boy threatened to jump off a building because he wanted a proper title. So-and-so's kept boy ran off, and now he has nothing. After so-and-so eloped with his kept boy, his parents yelled. I don't have a son who would be with a kept boy. Was being kept a necessity for humans? But my human didn't have one. He always seemed to be alone, never playing with other humans. He just relied on his cat, a bit of a loner. We cats like to be solitary, but from what I'd seen, humans moved in packs. Back when I was making a living near the big cage, packs of female humans would often surround me, fighting to be the one to pet me. Yes, I was always willing to be nice to female humans. They could even rub my belly. This was something my current human must never know. The cat lay down, feeling troubled. Was my human turning out strange because he clung to me all the time and didn't interact with other humans? In the human world, would he be ostracized for not having someone kept? He was already pitiful enough. Even that Mr. Evans had a kept person. Why didn't my human, a responsible feline guardian, has a lot to consider? As I was thinking, my stomach started to rumble. I decided to put the matter aside for now and enjoy my 6th meal of the day. A cat must be well fed to raise a human properly. I hopped off the flower bed and trotted back on my little paws. A lot of stray humans had been coming and going from the estate these past few days. I could tell they weren't kept by any cats. I was a magnanimous cat. I could permit their temporary stay. As I was passing through a patch of flowers, I suddenly heard someone mention my human's name. Well, I heard someone tried to climb into Mr. Sterling's bed last time and got thrown out. Still trying to cozy up to him this time. I stopped, my ears perked up, alert. Someone was trying to steal my human's den. When did this happen? From my vantage point, I could see the person opposite him flush red, looking humiliated but trying to maintain a haughty posture. Julian Sterling is a cripple, stuck in a wheelchair for life. I wouldn't deign to be kept by him. He grew more agitated as he spoke. So what if he was born with a silver spoon? You see how high and mighty he acts. After the accident, he was almost abandoned by the Sterling family. If I had pushed over his wheelchair back then, he probably would have had to grovel at my feet like a dog, unable to even crawl. I was furious, even more furious than when Brutus tried to steal my territory. How dare he say my human was like a dog? Those cat-despising creatures. I crouched low, bared my teeth with a low growl, and lunged, biting down hard on his calf. He screamed, "Where did this little beast come from?" He tried to hit me to shake me off. So stupid to think he could hurt me. I dodged nimbly, scrambled up a nearby tree, and looked down at him, my tail held high. A stupid, mean human. He deserved to be catless. The bad human below was still pointing at me and yelling something, but the person next to him paled, grabbed him, and whispered in his ear. The bad human froze for a moment, then left with him. The great cat had defended his human and chased away the bad guy. I was pleased with myself, but then I thought about his words and couldn't help but worry. I lay down on a branch and contemplated cat life. My human really didn't seem very popular. Humans have terrible judgment sometimes. Even an ugly brute like Brutus was liked by many people. How good could their taste be? Sigh, why did my human have to be a human? If he were a cat, he wouldn't have all these problems. I hadn't been lying there long when I heard my human calling for me. Sonny, I poked my furry head out from between the leaves and meowed at him. The cat is here. I saw his useless legs again. Humans can't even climb trees. When he saw me in the tree, he took a deep breath and said in a heavy voice, "Baby, don't move. I'll call someone, right? Call who? It's just a little jump for a cat." Ignoring his panicked gaze, I leaped from the tree. My human was frantic. He leaned forward as if to catch me and nearly tumbled out of his big wheels. I quickly ran to his side, meowing with concern. Humans are so big. If he fell, a cat couldn't pick him up by the scruff of his neck. He kept his head down, looking at his legs, then at me. His long eyelashes drooped, making me want to lick them a little. A good grooming always makes things better. My human seemed angry. He didn't pick me up right away. "Let's go." In the end, he scooped me into his arms. "Jumping from that high, I can't catch you. What if you get hurt?" The cat wasn't hurt. It was the human who was hurting. Feeling guilty, I purred and snuggled up, lying obediently on his lap. That night, to appease him, I deigned to sleep on the human's bed. I never expected the human to repay my kindness with treachery. He actually caught me and subjected me to a shower. I turned my back on him in a huff, leaving him my butt to dry. Cat consoles human. Cat is good. Human thinks cat is dirty. Human is bad, but my human was very gentle when he dried my fur. I let him do it for a while and started to get sleepy. "You can barely keep your eyes open," the human said, turning off the light. "Go to sleep, and don't use me as a springboard in the middle of the night." I was too lazy to respond to his slander and sank into a deep sleep. I dreamed of the day I found my human. I had just finished a fight with Brutus and had, of course, won. I had a few minor scratches, but those were badges of honor, proof that I ruled this street. I leaped onto a wall, proudly carrying my spoils, and noticed a lone human below. This human was different from others I'd seen. He was sitting on 2 large wheels. It was very strange. The cat was curious, so I paused to observe him, tilting my head. It started to rain. A puddle formed in a dip in the stone path, and the human's strange wheels got stuck in it, trapping him. An insignificant little puddle that I crossed countless times a day had him pitifully stuck in place. I felt a bit sorry for this human. I wondered how long he'd been stuck and if he'd eaten. The cat was now the boss of this street. Looking after a small human was no problem. I jumped off the wall and placed the piece of sausage I was carrying beside his wheel. "Eat up, human," I meowed generously. "This cat can find more." The human finally noticed me, his eyes widening in surprise. "Where did this little kitty come from?" He called me a little kitty. The cat was offended. I immediately let out a few loud meows and circled him twice, letting him see my size, telling him not to speak such nonsense. The human didn't understand. "You're hurt. Did another cat bully you?" The ultimate insult. Unbearable. I pawed at his pant leg. "Stop talking nonsense and eat." The human was still misunderstanding. "I don't have any food with me. Someone will be here soon. I can ask them to bring you some." I was exasperated. I picked up the sausage and jumped onto his lap. "Silly human, a cat has to feed you by hand." For me, the surprise in the human's eyes grew, then softened into a very gentle emotion. "Thank you, kitty." "What kitty?" The cat was disgusted. I stood on his lap and shook the water from my fur, showing off my heroic posture to earn the human's worship. This human was a picky eater. He didn't eat the sausage. I couldn't stand it and started scolding him for his behavior, but as he listened, a smile spread across his face. The cat gave up. The cat would say no more. Humans were so dumb. The dumb human finally waited for the person who came to rescue him, freeing him from that little puddle. I was about to make a graceful exit when I heard the human ask, "Kitty, do you want to come home with me?" The human had beautiful eyes, holding the gentle light of a serene lake. The shimmering light flickered and flickered, and the cat, dazed, agreed. Just like that, I'd picked up a human for myself. So rash. This cat had many admirers, you know. On the first day of my reign after defeating Brutus, my legend came to an abrupt end, whisked away by a human. He would never know whose love he had obtained, the love of a top cat as I dreamed. The lake turned into a whirlpool, pulling me down, 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 with his words echoing in my ears. "Do you want to come home with me?" With I shot my eyes open. Of course, no wonder my human didn't have a kept person. That's what he was asking me. He wanted this cat to be kept by him. Honestly, humans never speak clearly. They made this cat anxious for so long. A moment later, I realized something was wrong with my body. I looked at my front paws, long, large, smooth. Human skin, human hands. The cat had turned into a human. Realizing this, I excitedly shook the human lying next to me awake. "You're not a man without someone kept anymore. Because you're kept, one has arrived." My human opened his eyes. But there was no joy like I had imagined. Instead, his gaze was icy, reflecting a sharp, scrutinizing light, so fierce. If I still had my fur, it would have stood on end. I didn't like him looking at me with that intruder alert expression. It made me feel an anger that had me grinding my teeth, a low growl rumbling in my throat. "Who are you? How did you get into my room?" His face was pale as he glanced around. He propped himself up on his elbows, and upon noticing something was wrong, his previously calm tone became tinged with urgency. "Where's Sonny? What did you do to my cat?" Hearing his first reaction was to look for me, a little sun began to rise in my heart again. Humans are naturally dumb, and they don't have a cat's keen sense of smell. It was understandable that he couldn't recognize this cat. Speaking of which, now that this cat was human, could I drink those beverages with the long straws? Humans always accuse cats of not drinking enough water, but they're the ones who have to throw a bunch of stuff into their water before they can drink it. I was lost in daydreams when I saw the human stretch out his arm, straining to press a button by the bed. I know that one, it's the butler summoning device. Whenever the human pressed it, it would emit a beep boop beep boop sound that only Arthur could understand, and he would appear shortly after. I didn't know what evil race Arthur belonged to, but his appearance never meant anything good. He would either abduct the cat for a shower or take the cat to be poked with needles. And while doing these evil deeds, he could still have a cheerful smile on his face, looking kinder than that white-bearded, four-eyed old man who appeared all over the streets. It really was, as they say, you know, a person's noodles, not their heart. This cat is so knowledgeable, able to use profound human phrases from time to time. Though I don't understand why they're so obsessed with eating, always inventing phrases related to food. They call me a little glutton, but I think they're the big gluttons in front of Arthur. My human was also very weak and helpless. Every time, he could do nothing as Arthur forcibly took me away, just sitting in his wheelchair, worrying anxiously. When I returned and angrily meowed my complaints to him, he would always say sadly that he didn't want it either, that Arthur had snatched me away, and that he had fought with all his might to rescue me. He said it with such genuine emotion, his eyes red, as if he felt immense pain and shame for not being able to protect his cat. Sigh, the cat understands. I licked the back of his hand to comfort him. Human good, butler bad. Every time I saw his downcast and powerless expression, this cat would secretly swear an oath. One day, I will defeat the evil butler of this grand estate and rescue my human. Seeing that the butler was about to be summoned, I panicked and slapped the human across the face. His head snapped to the side, a bright red paw print appearing on his cheek. Oops, I forgot. I quickly tried to rub his face. Humans aren't like cats. Even though their nails are short, a palm strike can really hurt. When I was a little kitten, a bad human hit me, and I still remember the pain. But now I'm fierce. I could bite a chunk of flesh off him. The human grabbed my wrist and tried to roll me off the bed. I easily parried his attack, straddled him, and controlling my strength, slapped his other cheek, hoping he would calm down and recognize who this cat was. Strange. This is how I usually hit him. Every morning he dared to let his noble cat go hungry. I would do this, a slap to the face to let him feel the power of a hungry demon. He would know it was me without even opening his eyes, accurately catching my paw and planting a few kisses on it. Of course, I didn't like to hear the words that followed, like, "The doctor said you're overweight and need to eat less." Those doctors all look so tired and miserable. They've obviously never tasted cat food and just say it's bad. Why would I listen to them? Why can't he recognize me now that I'm a person? This cat is very sad. I sadly gave him another slap. If he turned into a cat, I would definitely recognize him. With one sniff, I cleared my throat and tried to communicate with him. Meow, meow. You, a human throat making a cat sound is so ugly, like a sheep bleating. I sulkily shut my mouth. If any other cat heard that, especially Brutus, I'd be laughed at for a whole year. Fortunately, I discovered that after organizing my thoughts, I could spontaneously speak the human language. Good heavens, I really am a genius cat, second to none. Brimming with confidence, I joyfully spoke my first human sentence to my human. Can you understand me when I speak human? The body beneath me stiffened, then began to tremble with humiliation. Seeing his reddened eyes, I suddenly felt a little lost and a little sad. I think I hurt my human's feelings. I couldn't think of a solution, so I could only do what I did as a cat, lie on top of him and rub my head against his chin. I didn't use human language, just kept whimpering softly, meow woo, meow woo. This cat didn't mean to. The human didn't return my affectionate touch, as he usually would. Instead, he stared rigidly and silently at the ceiling. The chest I was pressed against was rising and falling violently. Get out now. Just get out and I won't press charges, he said, his voice hoarse, a pleading tone creeping in at the end. My cat is missing, I have to find him. I'm right here, I said. He was quiet for a few seconds, then gritted his teeth and squeezed out, "You're sick." "I'm not sick," I retorted loudly, indignant. "Doctor. Lewis just praised me last time for being the healthiest, most robust cat he's ever handled. The one of part was eaten by the cat. I don't like people saying I'm sick. My best friend, Smudge, was abandoned by his human because he got sick, but every time he mentioned his owner, he never showed a hint of resentment, proudly describing countless times the scene of their first meeting. I had a broken leg back then, lying in a garbage heap about to die. It was Daddy who descended from the heavens, held me, and rushed me to the hospital, saving my life. I was still young then, not yet versed in the ways of cat society, and I foolishly asked, "Then why did he abandon you?" Smudge didn't speak. He hung his head and stared blankly for a moment, then began to lick his fur anxiously, mumbling, "It must be because I broke his favorite cup. Once he buys a new one, he'll come find me and take me home." Only later did I understand. It was because he got a skin disease with a few bald patches and wasn't pretty anymore. Humans are so strange. They didn't mind his broken leg, but they despised him for getting a skin disease and no longer being beautiful. Even though I shared half my food with him, he died quickly. Before he died, he was still painstakingly grooming his dirty fur, saying he wanted to be prettier when he went to find his daddy, hoping his daddy would still want him. That's why I don't like going to the hospital. I don't like the possibility of being sick. I'm your cat. I found you on Moon Street. You wouldn't even eat sausage, you're so picky. Besides a patient and capable top cat like me, what other cat would dare to take you? I boasted a little, then grabbed his hand and placed it on my hair, inviting him enthusiastically. "You can pet my fur now. It feels different from before, but it's very comfortable. You'll get used to it after a few pets." The human still didn't voice his approval, but the fingers on my hair twitched slightly. Just then, my ears twitched. I keenly detected footsteps outside the door, so familiar. It was the mean old butler, Arthur. I hastily jumped off the bed and, butt in the air, tried to dive under it. You couldn't bribe me out with 100 treat sticks this time. Meow, yikes, why can't I fit now that I'm a person? My human sat stunned on the bed, witnessing my series of actions. Still in shock, his lips moved weakly. I pulled my head out, jumped onto the bed, and yanked his blanket over myself. I rolled a couple more times, pressing myself tightly against his body, curled up in fear. You have to protect me this time. Don't let the bad butler take me for a shot. The butler knocked twice. I nudged the human's side, but found he was still in a daze, lost in thought. A few seconds of silence from outside the door, then a loud bang. The spry old butler burst through the door like a bandit. He strode into the room, and before he could finish saying, "Sir, are you all right?" he froze, staring at me, a head peeking out from beside the human. He pointed at me, his face pale. "We just dealt with one of you a few days ago. Haven't you people learned your lesson?" I had experience now. I knew these humans weren't smart. If a cat didn't spell it out for them, their stupid brains would never imagine I could turn into a person. I looked at my long arms. It wouldn't be so easy for him to grab me now. Besides, I was a person now. The status of a house's master should be immediately established. I wouldn't give the butler another chance to control me. So I asked menacingly, "Do you know who I am?" Arthur was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously replied, "Who?" "I am Sue." My human suddenly covered my lips with his palm, cutting off my next words. I couldn't help it. I stuck out my tongue and licked, then gently bit the soft flesh. The human snatched his hand back as if burned and even glared at me. "What?" I looked back innocently, baring my small canines. Arthur watched our interaction, and his whole body trembled. This time, his finger pointed at the human, his voice filled with heartbroken disappointment. "Sir, how could you? The circle is messy, but you have always kept to yourself, never dabbling in those depraved habits. If you truly like someone, you should bring them home openly, not learn from others and keep a secret lover." He studied me carefully, a look of pity in his eyes. "How old is this child? Is he even an adult? How could you secretly bring someone home and do such a beastly thing?" I nodded as I listened. Cats are a type of beast, after all. Nothing wrong with that. However, I stuck a hand out from under the blanket and corrected Arthur with precision. "Of course I'm an adult. I'm 2 years old. Already a strong and mighty adult cat." 20, the human interrupted, speaking quickly. "He's 20, only 20, Arthur exclaimed. "Doesn't that mean he's still in school?" I answered honestly. "I've never been to school." Arthur slapped his thigh, indignant. "No wonder you were tricked home by an old man like him, taking advantage of someone who's uneducated and uncultured." The look in his eyes was overflowing with pity for me. My human closed his eyes, a vein throbbing on his forehead. "Arthur, it's not what you think." I decided to take up the responsibility of the head of the family, mediate the family conflict, and clear my human's name. I listed my human's actions toward me in a fair and objective manner. He didn't bully me, really. He just occasionally has some compulsory behaviors. He doesn't allow me to interact with outsiders, always demands I sleep with him, and if I don't agree, he kisses me hard. He's actually quite good to me. You're not allowed to say bad things about him. Wait, why did Arthur look like he was about to faint? Thankfully, Arthur was in good health and managed not to pass out. He launched into a lecture, berating the human until my cat brain grew foggy and I started yawning, my eyes drooping shut. Of course, I was hiding in the human's arms while I did it. If he'd caught me, he probably would have lectured the cat too. Finally, he left, shaking his head and sighing. The human shook my shoulder. "Don't sleep. Let's get this straight first." So annoying, what a pest. He was always like this when I was a cat, too, loving to rub my belly while I was sleeping. Rubbing was fine, but did he have to say, "Baby, have you gained weight again?" The human looked at me with a complicated expression, holding on to a last shred of hope. "Are you really Sunny?" "Of course I am," I said, thinking for a moment before offering proof. "There's still some of my hidden jerky under the third cabinet on the left in your walk-in closet." "How did you become human?" He still found it hard to believe, muttering again, "How can a cat become a person? So annoying." If I still had my tail, I'd have whipped him in the face with it by now. He seemed to remember something and picked up the black rectangle from the bedside table, his fingers swiping across it. Seeing the glowing black rectangle, my eyes widened. I wasn't sleepy anymore. I sat up and loudly accused him. "How could you, when I was a cat?" As soon as he touched this ugly black thing, his attention would be completely absorbed by it. Sometimes he wouldn't even notice me biting his pant leg. Even if he spared a hand to pet me, his eyes would be glued to it. Petting a cat with his hands, but his gaze was on someone else. Now I'm a person, a whole big lump of me right in front of him, and he's still ignoring me for it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I let out a cry and bit down on a corner of the black rectangle. "Bad thing, I'll bite you to death," the fickle human yelped. "Hey," and quickly used his fingers to pry my mouth open. "Why are you biting my phone?" "Isn't it dirty?" I was feeling wronged by him defending the other party, but then I saw my own image reflected in the black rectangle. My cat self. The tabby cat with glossy fur had a round face and round eyes, sitting on the windowsill with its head held high, looking very proud. So there was a tiny me inside. My anger dissipated, and I happily admired my heroic and majestic cat body. I wasn't angry anymore. I rested my head on the human's shoulder and curiously watched what he was doing. The human twitched his shoulder, seeming a little unaccustomed to it. He tapped on a small red square inside the black rectangle. A video filled the screen. I squinted at it, and with my sharp eyes, noticed a small bump under the covers. I happily announced, "That's the cat," but the human's expression was very grave. He watched as the tabby cat nestled in his arms in the video, transformed into a naked young man after a blinding white light. The image in the rectangle stopped changing. I poked it quizzically. The person beside me didn't react. After a long time, he let out a shaky breath. He looked at me, his gaze no longer holding the initial hostility. "Baby," he tried another name, asking tentatively. Like a dog owner who had tirelessly trained a dumb dog and finally taught it to shake, I let out a relieved and gratified smile. I wrapped my arms tightly around his waist and rubbed my face against his chest to express my joy. "You finally believe it's me. You're so slow." Although they say you should use positive reinforcement with humans, I couldn't help but offer a small reprimand. The human deleted the video from the black rectangle. Seeing my pouting, slightly unhappy face, he instructed me seriously, "Don't reveal to anyone that you used to be a cat." I thought for a moment and asked, "Not even Arthur?" He rejected it sternly. "No." I said, "Oh," and peeked at him, my eyes darting around as I came to a conclusion. "Are you getting jealous again?" I comforted him understandingly. "Don't be jealous. Even as a person, I'll only be good to you." His face darkened. "Jealous of what? Where did you learn all this nonsense?" After a moment he huffed, "And you know I don't like it, yet you go up and rub on every person you see. You have no cat morals. By the great cat mother, I've been wronged. When did I go up and rub on every person I see? It's not like I'm itchy. Why does the human always try to pin everything on the cat?" He was still worried, and said in a tone used to scare cats, "Not all humans are good people. Some are very bad and specialize in bullying little kitties like you. I know, I was hit by a bad human when I was little, but I'm very tough." I bit his hand until it bled. He fell silent and reached for the back of my ear, where he felt a scar. Now my ear really was a bit itchy. I couldn't help but twitch it and ask, "Are you still checking if I'm your cat?" This time he said no. He caressed the scar, his touch very light, as if touching something fragile. I don't know if it was because I no longer had fur to cover it, but the places he touched felt like a faint electric current was passing through. The roots of my teeth itched, and I really wanted to bite someone. I looked up and met his dark pupils. For the first time, I saw a blurry reflection of my human face in his eyes. The human had that fierce expression again, but I wasn't scared anymore. Cats are very smart. We can distinguish between good people and bad people, between malice and heartache. After a while, he uncomfortably pulled his hand back. "Can you change back?" I wrinkled my nose and said with difficulty, "I don't know." Seeing my confused face, he sighed and helped pull the blanket up to my chin. "Let's sleep for now." It was only then that I belatedly realized a problem. "Do you not like me being a person?" I asked in a very polite tone, but my eyes were threatening him fiercely. If he dared to say he didn't like it, I would bite him. The TV taught me this. It's called being polite before resorting to force. You can't spoil a human too much. He quickly denied it. "No, I'm just not used to it. Even a cat can adapt so quickly to being a person." I patted his hand. "You have to try harder." The human chuckled, and the heavy cloud hanging over his brow lifted a little. "Okay, I'll try. Then let's go to sleep, Daddy." The human's eyes flew wide open. "What did you call me, Daddy?" I said, bewildered by his overreaction. "Or should I call you human?" "No," he refused sternly. "In front of other people, you absolutely cannot call me that." His strong opposition just annoyed me. I grumbled, "It's not like I wanted to call you that." It's because you used to hold me and call yourself daddy all the time, saying things like, who else could be your daddy but me? All right, he covered my mouth again, his ears so red they could have been bleeding. I was wrong, okay, just don't call me that now that you're a person. Then what should I call you? Just call me by my name. I'm Julian Sterling, I interrupted, repeating his name word for word, a peak of sterling silver. I know every human is different. This was one of my human's unique marks. Julian froze, his gaze flickering. He coughed to cover it up before moving on to the next topic. You need a new name too. You can't be called Sunny anymore. I hesitated, a little reluctant to let it go. To facilitate management by the Meow Meow Bureau, the process of changing a cat's name is very troublesome. Every cat cherishes their first official name, no matter how it sounds. I thought hard for a while, and the frown on my brow smoothed out. I've thought of a human name. You must be the first clever little cat to name yourself. He gave me a random compliment and an encouraging look. What is it? Orion Ashwood. Orion. At the dining table, after Julian introduced my new name, Arthur momentarily lost control of his volume. Realizing his gaffe, he quickly recovered and gave me a thumbs up. That's a very powerful and impressive name. Right, I curled my lips in a smug smile. Arthur might be mean, but he had pretty good taste. What a coincidence, he said with a beaming smile. Our little cat is named Sunny. I tried my best to keep my smile in check, using every idiom I knew to sound completely modest. Just from the name, you can tell he's a handsome, strong, magnificent, clever, and lovable, one-of-a-kind cat. Ha ha ha, he laughed heartily. He's actually a silly cat. He can chase his own tail for a whole day. If Julian hadn't quickly held me down, I would have pounced on the disrespectful old man. Arthur, completely unaware of the near tragedy, turned his gaze to Julian, his smile vanishing. He said reproachfully, Sir, how could you send Sunny away in the middle of the night? He's just a cat. He wouldn't have bothered you too. If you don't want to keep him, he said, looking like he was about to jump out of his seat. I'll take him to my room and keep him. I was quite moved. I never knew Arthur had such deep feelings for me. But then he continued, even if you had to send him away, you should have had him neutered first. I even had a whole script planned out. He enthusiastically explained to me, our Sunny is so silly. He believes whatever the master says. The time we sent him to the dock, cough, 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 Julian beside me was suddenly seized by a violent coughing fit. Every time I remember how I failed to protect Sunny, he coughed until the corners of his eyes turned red, his voice heavy. I'm overwhelmed with grief. The flicker of suspicion I had just felt immediately turned into heartache. I turned to Arthur, displeased. You're not allowed to say any more. You've upset him. Arthur, why didn't you tell me there was a new script? After dinner, while Julian was in the study, Arthur secretly asked me, Orion, how far have you and the master gone? I also lowered my voice and asked him, Arthur, do you know what kept means? Arthur didn't mind me calling him by a title that aged him a generation. Instead, he righteously spoke up for me. Is that what the master told you? How could he? Don't worry, I'll talk to him for you later. We don't do that in this house. A boyfriend is a boyfriend. What's all this kept business? It's not like he's a mother duck leading a line of ducklings. Seeing his angry expression and remembering what Julian had told me, I quickly waved my hands in denial. No, that's not it. But as a cat, my understanding of human relationships was limited. For a moment, I didn't know how to define it, so I could only give the opposite answer. Julian is the one being kept by me. I am his master. There was nothing wrong with that. I was the one who ruled this house, after all. Arthur fell silent. He looked me up and down, his eyes filled with a hesitant confusion, which then turned into shock and finally acceptance. After a long moment, he laughed awkwardly. Haha, you young people are so full of energy. I didn't understand the connection, but that didn't stop me from making a grand promise to him. Arthur, don't you worry. Now that he's with me, Julian is a lucky man. I learned the line from a TV show we watched together. Unfortunately, he didn't understand my good intentions. He just walked away with a dazed expression, his steps unsteady. Julian came out of the study and wheeled himself over to me. I was dozing off on the sofa. Seeing him, I naturally rested my head on his lap. This human sleep schedule is so unhealthy. Can't sleep when you should, always sleepy when you're awake. I suggest all humans adopt a cat sleep schedule. His hand hovered in the air for a few seconds before he casually placed it on my hair. What did you talk to Arthur about? He had a strange look in his eyes when he passed me. Although I felt I hadn't said anything wrong, I felt a little guilty for some reason and changed the subject. Why did you only stay in the little dark room for a short while today? I grabbed his fingers to play with. You used to stay for so long. I get so bored outside by myself. He paused, his gaze on me softening, a kind of flattered emotion in it. Sorry, I didn't know. I thought you'd get annoyed if I stayed too long. It's okay, that's true, I comforted him magnanimously. I often don't want to take you with me when I'm playing. You're just a bit too clingy for a cat. Julian forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Heh, my apologies for disturbing your peace. The sun is in a good mood today. I looked at the brilliant sunlight flooding the doorway and extended an invitation. Do you want to go out and play with me? Julian didn't like going out. If there wasn't something he absolutely had to deal with outside, he could lock himself in the house all day, growing into a light-averse plant. I was worried that being caged for too long would make him depressed, so I often tried to think of ways to get him out for some fresh air. I wandered through every corner of the estate every day, waiting for him to find me, and he always did. Nature is generous. It didn't mind his purpose for going out, nor his hurried pace. On his way to find me, it would fairly give him sunshine and let the breeze send him a wisp of floral fragrance. Julian thought he was free-ranging a cat that didn't like to come home. He didn't know that it was the cat who was walking a human who didn't like to go out every day. Perhaps I still wasn't used to a human body. Walking felt a bit clumsy, not as light and agile as when I was a cat. I looked at Julian with envy, starting to miss the days when my body was small and I could use him as a ride. I didn't push him from behind. Subconsciously, I felt that humans wouldn't like that. I matched the speed of his wheels, taking 2 steps and a hop, then slowing down to wait for him. You don't have to follow me so closely. Julian sounded a bit helpless, but also very gentle. Whatever you did as a cat, you can do as a person. Wait, I did not mean for you to roll in the mud. I emerged from the flower bush and opened my palm. A pale purple butterfly fluttered its wings and flew past his wrist, which was resting on the armrest. Julian, my gaze followed the butterfly to him, and I said, sometimes I think being human is pretty good. What's good about it? I thought for a moment and said, after becoming human, the world got smaller, but it also became clearer. Before, looking up at the sky was just a gray haze, always like a rainy day. Now I've discovered that the color of the sky is very beautiful. Sunny days and rainy days, besides the rain, there's a big difference. Butterflies and flowers were just blurry patches of color. It's just that butterflies moved, and flowers had a scent. I shared with him earnestly, did you know, I just saw the patterns on a butterfly's wings for the first time. They look like eyes, it's so magical. Julian chuckled. What else? And also, we happened to be under a tree I used to love to climb. I got a feel for it, and using all 4 limbs, scrambled up the tree in a few moves. Julian, I squatted on a thick branch, leaning on it and smiling down at him, happily announcing, this is great, I'm still very good at climbing trees. For a stray cat, climbing is a very important skill. That's why the first time Julian held me to trim my nails, I cried so miserably and struggled so fiercely that I scared him. He held me in his arms, clumsily patting my back as if comforting a human baby. I'm sorry, baby, don't be scared, we won't trim them. There was a bloody scratch on his chin from my frantic struggling, and he looked a mess, but there wasn't a trace of anger on his handsome face. I let out a dazed meow and nervously kneaded his suit pants with my claws, slowly relaxing my body and lying back down. Julian ignored his bleeding chin and instead scratched mine, smiling as he said, good, it seems you rarely lost a fight outside. I guiltily licked his fingers twice, thinking to myself, why are humans so fragile? The cat didn't even use much force. If I had used the same force as when I fought Brutus, wouldn't a human just snap and die with one swipe? For the first time, I felt that my overly sharp claws were a burden, forcing me to be light-footed and cautious. Julian stared at me from under the tree, afraid that if he blinked, I would fall. Son and why, with no one else around, he went back to my cat name, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Do you still think you're a cat, that any old branch can support your current weight? This tree is so tall. What if you fall? Don't be scared. I could speak human now, so I could finally explain to him. I've climbed many trees taller than this. I won't fall. Don't be angry, I coaxed him. Look, I shook the branch. The tree, having escaped the cat's clutches, never expected to be tormented by a human. For a moment, it wept tears of rain, its petals flying everywhere. Julian sat under the tree, as if caught in a sudden downpour without an umbrella, just standing there foolishly, drenched in fragrance, completely soaked. I said to him in a tone a parent would use to scold a picky child, but with a sense of helplessness. You never liked to go out, so I can only bring the flowers home to you. When I was a cat, I could only bring back one flower at a time. You still haven't filled a whole book. It's better now. You can pick up as many as you want. A whole bookshelf will smell fragrant. Julian, I'm very strong. I can not only climb trees, but I'm also very good at fighting and hunting. You don't have to be afraid of the world outside the house. I'll protect you. Julian stared at me, then suddenly turned his head away, as if his eyes were burned and he couldn't look anymore. He mumbled, "Where did a little cat like you learn all these ways to sweet-talk people?" I came down from the tree. His jaw was tight, but this time he didn't say anything more, just fixed his gaze on me again. I walked back to him, fascinated by his reddened face. I put my hands behind my back, tilted my head, and looked at him from the left and then the right, finally bending down to look up at him. Julian couldn't take it anymore. "What are you looking at?" "Julian," I said, as if I had discovered a new rat's nest, "I've found that after becoming human, you look even more handsome in my eyes." His face turned even redder. "So you're saying I wasn't handsome in a cat's eyes?" "It's not your fault," I said honestly. "In a cat's eyes, all humans look a bit monotonous." The monotonous Julian's red face turned dark. Now there was some color. He said irritably, "Squat down." I muttered, "You're not going to teach me to shake hands next, are you?" And squatted down. He plucked a flower that was stuck in my hair and closed it in his palm. "This one is enough." How could it be enough? I furrowed my brows, not understanding how he could be so easily satisfied. "I have another gift for you." "What is it?" His eyes were gentle, very interested. I grinned and placed the large, multi-legged, fat bug I had just caught in his palm next to the flower. The fat bug, under Julian's expectant gaze, put on a shy performance, moving him so much that his expression went blank for a moment. I recited a human proverb about how the thought behind a gift is what counts, hoping he wouldn't mind. "You are what you eat. I thank you." This was the first day I spent as a human. I was accepted by my human and given a human name. Everything was heading in a good direction. I was immersed in excitement, feeling that there wasn't much difference between being a human and a cat, between Orion and Sunny. I naively thought that every day from now on would be like this. But I gradually discovered that Julian didn't seem to think so. He began to distance himself from me, with a gentle, not so intense but very firm attitude, trying to push me away. He was still very good to me. He gave me a large room to live in, right next to his. He still set aside time to play with me every day, would help me comb my hair, and would even cook human food for me based on a cat's tastes. He even had Arthur find an ecosystem tank specifically to raise the bug I gave him. But it seemed he wasn't as good to me anymore, at least not like before. He no longer allowed me to sleep in his bed, no longer hugged or kissed me, no longer buried his face in my belly and cried out without any care for his image. He was more polite to me, full of courtesy but lacking in intimacy. I endured it for a few days, rolling around in my empty room out of boredom. If I hadn't remembered Julian's instructions, I would have wanted to howl in my room for a whole day and night to let him know the price of locking a cat in a room. A week later, I decided to take the initiative and go scratch at Julian's door. He came back very late that day. I waited outside his door until I was dozing off before I heard the sound of wheels approaching. Finally, they stopped in front of me. I rubbed my eyes. First, I saw the small shadow of the wheelchair on the floor. Then I looked up and saw his slightly empty suit pant legs, his well-tailored shirt, and his calm but slightly weary eyes. When he saw me, his eyebrows twitched slightly, and the coldness he had brought back from outside lessened a bit. He seemed surprised but also amused, and asked me, "What are you doing squatting here in the middle of the night, playing the role of a lucky cat outside my room?" There it was again, I thought. When Julian was happy, he called me baby. When he was angry, he called me by my full name, Sunny. But ever since I became human, he had intentionally or unintentionally omitted any form of address when we were alone. "Julian," I squatted on the ground and looked up at him, not sad, just confused. "You haven't called me baby in a long time." He froze for a moment, seeming to hesitate on how to answer, lost in thought. "Is it because I'm not a cat anymore?" I asked directly. He raised his hand, wanting to pat my head like he used to when comforting a little cat. But in the end, he just adjusted his other cuff and said in a light, joking tone, "Look at you now, so big. You stand taller than me in my wheelchair. Calling you baby isn't appropriate anymore. But you promised me you would try to adapt." I frowned. This was the one thing I couldn't accept. He had promised me, but he hadn't done it. the cat named Sunny, and the person he didn't know how to address were easily and clearly separated by him. I had suddenly become a stranger to Julian, someone not close, not distant. This realization made me very uncomfortable, like my favorite toy had been washed until it was ruined and thrown away, replaced with a brand new, more expensive one, and I was told, "Isn't this better? Humans are always like this, forget it." I stood up and tugged at my pants. "Then I'll go sleep in Arthur's room. I don't like wearing human clothes, especially pants, but Julian said humans who run around with their butts bare get caught and stewed with oranges. I don't understand what's so scary about being stewed with oranges. Maybe because it tastes bad." Wait, I had just taken a step when Julian called out to me, shocked. "What are you doing sleeping in Arthur's room?" I turned back and said matter-of-factly, "Because I can't get used to my current room, and you won't let me sleep in your bed. Arthur put my old cat bed in his room, so I'm going to sleep in the cat bed in his room." Julian's mouth opened, but he stammered and didn't say anything, which annoyed me. I didn't want to deal with him anymore and was about to leave. "Wait," he made some sort of decision, his voice lowering. "Tonight. You sleep here with me tonight." Regaining access to Julian's room, I felt like a king returning to his domain, my heart pounding with excitement. Before he could stop me, I had already shed my clothes and without a second thought, pounced onto his bed. "Come on," I patted the spot next to me, inviting him warmly. "Why are you still standing at the door? Are the big wheels stuck again?" I anxiously sat up, the blanket slipping from my chest, exposing my entire upper body to his view. Julian's gaze was like a scurrying mouse, constantly avoiding me. I looked in the direction he was looking, confused, but didn't see any flying insects or anything. After thinking about it, he was probably disgusted that I had taken off my clothes again. "What's wrong with you?" I felt he was becoming really annoying now. "We're not outside. Do people have to sleep with clothes on?" I lifted the waistband of my underwear to emphasize, "And I'm not bare-assed. I didn't mean that," Julian said. "Hurry up and cover yourself with the blanket. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold?" He went to take a shower. While he was showering, I squatted outside the bathroom, staring at the moving figure on the frosted glass, ready to rush in and save him at any moment. "I'll come in and help you wash." The response I got was the cold, hard click of the door being locked. Inspired by my eager gaze, Julian showered very quickly this time. He propped himself up with his arms and sat on the bed. Then, as if moving cargo, he moved his legs onto the bed. While doing this, he kept his head down, his profile calm, so accustomed to it that one couldn't detect any negative or extreme emotions. However, I was not human. A cat can sense a human's bad mood. Unhappy humans smell bitter, bitterer than rotten flowers and grass, bitterer than hard-to-swallow pills, so bitter that even a cat can't properly digest this sadness. Smudge had lost a part of his foot, but he could still walk and climb, just a little slower than a normal kitten. Julian couldn't. I had seen him fall clumsily in his room when he was alone. An action as simple as getting up was like climbing an insurmountable mountain for him. At that time I thought, if only I were a person, not a cat. Then I wouldn't just stand by, meowing anxiously, constantly biting his sleeve, but being of no use at all. I'm still not very good at being a person, so when he finally looked at me, I hadn't learned to keep my eyes silent. And my mouth had to add, "Julian, don't be scared. I'm very strong now. It doesn't matter if you fall, and besides, I won't let you fall. No more fear of others being present, and no more fear of being alone." He suddenly smiled and raised his hand to cover my eyes. "Silly kitty, now that I'm a person, I know a lot more." Silly kitty sounds like silly goose, so it can't be a good thing I rolled my eyes, my eyelashes brushing against his palm. "Just for tonight." The warmth before my eyes was fleeting, so brief it felt like an illusion. He resumed his stiff tone, seeming very impersonal. "Tomorrow, I'll have someone make a larger version of your old cat bed, using the same material. If you really don't want to sleep on the bed, you can move the cat bed into your room and sleep there." He emphasized, "You are not allowed to sleep in Arthur's room. You have to be considerate of his age. He can't accept a grown man running into his room to sleep in a cat bed." "Okay," I agreed obediently, then asked, "Can I move the cat bed into your room? If you don't want to sleep with me, I can sleep on the floor." He seemed to choke, coughing so hard his cheeks turned red. "What's wrong?" I patted his back worriedly. How did he catch a cold himself? It seems human clothes aren't very warm after all. "What do you mean by sleep with? Forget it. I'll start arranging for you to have lessons tomorrow." In the future, if you're not sure what something means, don't say it in front of people. I never expected a human to be so ungrateful. My eyes widened, and I resentfully pulled the entire blanket to my side, deciding not to give him a pleasant look for the rest of the night. I didn't hold out for long before I grudgingly scooted over and gave him back a small portion. Sigh, I chided myself. What kind of cat spoils a human this much? I had originally planned to be good tonight, to put on an act for one night and invade the bed for a lifetime. But in the middle of the night, a sudden itching started at my back, growing more and more intense, impossible to ignore. It felt like 1,000 tiny bugs were crawling on me, circling the base of my tail. I scratched it with my hand a few times, but it didn't help. I was scratching right where it itched, but I could never hit the right spot. Human hands are so long. Why are they so useless? I was on the verge of tears. What terrified me the most was that when Smudge was sick, he always told me he was itchy. He refused to let me lick him, saying he was afraid of infecting me. I didn't know what infection meant back then. I just remembered that being sick meant being itchy, and it was very uncomfortable. Just like now, was I sick too? After reaching this conclusion, my breath caught in my throat for a moment. The next second I bit my lip, suppressed a gasp, and didn't dare to move, afraid that Julian would notice. He already didn't like me that much anymore. If he found out I was sick, he might be eager to replace the old cat with a new one. I inched my way to the edge of the bed, trying to sneak back to my own room. However, the farther I got from him, the more pronounced the strange sensation in my body became, as if a string was attached between us, tightening whenever I had the intention to leave. I almost wanted to roll around on the bed without a care, just like when I was a cat and felt uncomfortable. I would roll and rub on the floor. The pain made me forget everything else, and I followed my instincts, crawling back towards Julian on all fours. I had made up my mind. If he despised me, I would just leave him first. I tugged at him several times, but this person slept heavier than a 20-year-old grandpa cat, with no reaction for a long time. I was so itchy it was unbearable. Tossing and turning didn't help. I kicked my legs on the bed in frustration. I had been injured many times when I was on the streets, and the process of waiting for the wounds to heal was also accompanied by pain and itching, but it had never been this unbearable. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and gently patted my forehead. Julian's voice was nasal and slightly hoarse, carrying a kind of helpless indulgence. "Why do you still like to rave on my bed even after becoming a person?" Hearing the long-lost, familiar tone, a sense of grievance I didn't understand welled up in my heart. I should have been happy, but I was a little sad. Perhaps in his half-asleep state, he thought I was still his cat, not completely distinguishing me as another strange human to be distanced from. I sniffled, grabbed his hand, and placed it on my cheek, hoping he would pet me. Even if he didn't call me baby or kiss me, just like he would with a stray cat he met outside that he didn't plan to take home, it would be okay. I rubbed against his palm and asked softly, "Julian, can you rub my butt?" He didn't speak. I turned my back to him to show him where and urged in a low voice, "Hurry up." He used to chase me to pet my butt when I didn't want him to. Now that I was offering, he was dithering. "Honestly, human hearts are pretzels," Julian stammered. "And no. Why not?" I was so angry I wanted to bite him until he was wide awake and remembered that he was the human I kept and that all intimacy and touch should belong to me. I was so miserable I was about to cry when a large hand finally landed on my behind, rubbing stiffly a couple of times. Not only was he reluctant, but his technique had gotten worse. I hadn't even been diagnosed yet, and this was his attitude. Did he think a cat couldn't tell he was being perfunctory? "I don't want to keep you anymore." The physical discomfort ignited a fire in my heart, burning away the last of my sanity. "You're getting more and more annoying. No other human is like you. I don't want you behind me." Julian's hand, which had been hesitant and afraid to use force, as if mending a broken bone, suddenly pressed down hard. My whole body trembled, and the tail end of my complaint turned into a scream. He sighed, turned my body to face him, and wiped away the tears welling in my eyes with his thumb. I was enveloped in his embrace, as if submerged in a pool of warm water, the gentle ripples washing away my restless anxiety. For the first time, I admitted that being wrapped in such warmth was actually quite comfortable. He gently patted my back with one hand, steadying my writhing body, while his other hand soothed me from behind with a rhythm of light and heavy touches. I was wrong. He bowed his head and admitted his mistake to me, his lips brushing against my ear. Julian himself froze, forcing himself not to flinch away, and continued in a low, humble voice, "I'll help you rub it. It won't be uncomfortable anymore." The man's hand was large, larger than a kitten's paw, larger than my human hand, and very strong, capable of crushing many bad bugs at once. It was so comfortable I wanted to purr. The physical discomfort was one thing, but what made me happier was the feeling of being cherished and cared for again. Not there, you're not in the right spot. As a cat, I was an expert at pushing my luck and taking advantage of a situation. I immediately began to direct him with righteous indignation, a little higher. The sound of tearing fabric was almost drowned out by my soft whimpers. Julian's movements paused. A tail had appeared in his hand. A long, fluffy, smooth cat's tail. A tail, I exclaimed in surprise, unable to help but wag it. It's my tail. I don't know if he hadn't processed it yet, but Julian's hand was still resting on the base of my tail. I was a magnanimous cat. Since he had helped me, I'd let him pet it. I eagerly pushed my tail into his arms, but due to my inexperience with controlling my new tail, I accidentally slapped him across the face. The new tail was majestic, and with one flick, it left Julian's face bright red. The cat feigned remorse and apologized profusely, but in reality was so pleased that its tail was held high. When I woke up the next day, the tail was gone again. Julian made me stay in my room for 5 days, until he was sure the tail wouldn't suddenly pop out again, before he would let me out. He had originally wanted to keep me confined for a few more days, but he felt that putting a cat in solitary confinement was too cruel, and he had discovered that my destructive capabilities had increased dramatically since I became human. To avoid having to redecorate the room, he finally relented. He lectured me sternly, "Don't let any other humans see your cat tail. Don't go too far from me. If you feel uncomfortable, come find me immediately. What will happen if they see it? Will I be stewed with oranges?" He gave a grim smile and threatened, "Not with oranges, they'll stew the cat." Even though I knew this man was mean and just trying to scare me, I was still frightened and hid in his arms, indignantly accusing, "Why are people so mean?" He rested his forehead in his hand and thought for a long time before saying in a tone of self-abandonment, "If an outsider really sees it, just say." He hemmed and hawed for a long time without finishing. I urged him impatiently, "Say what?" He closed his eyes and said quickly, "Just say the tail is fake, that I like it this way, that it's a little something between us." I tilted my head, curious. "What's a little something? Don't worry about it. If you're in a tight spot and can't think of an answer, just say that." So when Arthur subtly reminded me that young people should have some restraint and not agree to all of Julian's demands, I immediately put my new knowledge to use, retorting loudly, "Arthur, don't worry about it. This is a little something between me and Julian." The old man's eyes widened. "What little something? He's an old man corrupting a young child. Is that a little something? That's a sin." And with that, he turned and marched towards the study. Another half a month passed, and the tail didn't grow back. I was even a little disappointed. After all, of all my body parts, I liked my big, fluffy tail the most. Julian liked it too. He was stubborn and wouldn't admit it, but at night, his hand would unconsciously find its way to the base of my tail as he slept. In the morning, he would wake up with a perfectly straight face and accuse me of crossing the dividing line and crawling into his arms. People's hearts are pretzels, all twisted and salty. This cat gets it now. Although the tail hadn't reappeared, Julian still tacitly allowed me to sleep in his bed. He said with great conviction, "This is all to prevent what happened that night from happening again. You're just a little cat. How would you know how to handle it?" I turned my back to him, scrolling on my claw phone while mumbling, in agreement. My claw phone and I had now buried the hatchet, regretting not meeting sooner, all grievances wiped away by a single session of play. Sigh. If I had known it was this much fun, what was the point of fighting for Julian's attention? I should have just snatched the claw phone. The person behind me had been psyching himself up for a while, only to realize my mind was completely elsewhere. A strange silence fell. I was in the middle of liking a post by a particularly beautiful long-haired calico cat in my claw phone and asking her for tail care tips when I suddenly felt a chill behind me. I scrolled to the next video and was captivated by a male human who looked perfect for making biscuits on. I admired him for a few extra seconds, and then the claw phone was snatched from my hands. Julian flicked off the light with a snap. No little cats getting addicted to the internet. "Time for sleep." "Wait," I quickly requested. "Can you give that human a thumbs up for me? I'm afraid the claw phone will think I don't like watching him." He chuckled and said okay, but I don't know if he did it wrong because I never saw that very needable human again. Besides Julian always getting between me and my claw phone like a cruel matchbreaker, overall, I was very satisfied with my current life until one day, Arthur mysteriously beckoned to me. I reluctantly tore my attention away from my cloth phone and trotted over. "What's up, Arthur?" He gave me a knowing, avuncular grin and stuffed an invitation and a fountain pen into my hand. The master forgot something. "Orion, could you take it to him?" Although I didn't know what was so important about a pen, the chance to go out and find Julian was always something to make a cat happy. I was chauffeured by Arthur's people to a grand, glittering hall. Through the crowd, I spotted Julian at a glance. He was sitting down with a group of people at the far end of a long table, directly opposite me. I happily started walking towards him. I passed a small tower made of stacked glass cups, which tempted me to sneak several glances. It took a lot of self-control not to knock it over with one swipe. Julian seemed to sense me and turned his head, his eyes meeting mine perfectly. He was a little surprised, then a hint of worry appeared in his eyes. He motioned for the people talking to him to wait a moment, then waved me over. At that moment, my heart beat a little faster, and my steps became lighter. It was as if I had turned back into a cat with soft paw pads, running freely through the estate on all fours, my big tail held deliberately high, like a little flag to guide my human to me. After a few more steps, I realized it wasn't a hallucination. The familiar itching sensation appeared again at the base of my tail. The tail wanted to come out again. I weaved through the crowd, almost running towards Julian. Not far away, he opened his arms, his expression a mixture of exasperation and a hint of irrepressible pride. "Why are you so clingy?" Before he could finish, he realized something was wrong, and his face changed slightly. Under the astonished gazes of everyone present, I plopped down onto Julian's lap, wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, and tried to shrink into his embrace. I was afraid a tail would just pop out of thin air. Then I really would be caught and stewed by the bad humans. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, pressing against his hot skin, and squeezed out a tiny whisper, "Julian, the tail. The tail is coming out again." The arm Julian had around my waist tightened. When he looked up at the others, his expression showed no fluctuation. In fact, it became particularly cold. "I have some family matters to attend to. Please excuse me." He held me, turned the wheelchair away from the crowd, and left, appearing calm and unruffled. Only I, pressed against him, knew that this man was practically paralyzed with tension. I secretly lifted my eyes and took in the various expressions of the people behind him, quietly reporting to him. "Julian, they're all looking at you. Don't talk." Julian's voice was steady but tinged with numbness, as if he'd been dead for a while. He said he was afraid of surveillance cameras elsewhere and took me to a restroom stall in the most remote corner. As soon as the door was locked, my tense body relaxed and I gasped for air. Having been through this once, Julian was very practiced and calm this time. He didn't need any instructions and started rubbing the base of my tail with his hand. He was even more skilled, the pressure just right, almost reaching his peak cat petting level. But this time my discomfort didn't ease at all, and the tail was slow to appear. The ticklish, itchy feeling gradually climbed up my spine. Those malicious little bugs were determined to get revenge for last time, coming back with a vengeance. They tried to crawl into my head and gnaw through the last string of my sanity. I was on the verge of collapse, leaning on Julian's shoulder, opening my mouth to bite down hard. First lesson of the cat literacy charity class. A cat who has kept a human must take up the responsibility of a guardian and not use domestic violence against the human. In the end, I just pressed my forehead against him, my whole body trembling. "Baby." Hearing the long-lost name, I thought it was a hallucination brought on by the pain. I held back my tears and met his gaze for a few seconds. It wasn't until he called me again that I blinked, leaned in, and rubbed my cheek against his, smearing my tears on him. Julian's hands didn't stop, and he had never been so talkative. He called me baby, said he would let me have the bed and he would sleep in the cat bed, and even promised to tie up Dr. Lewis and let me give him a shot. I sobbed and added, "And Arthur and Dr. Davis and Dr. King." Okay. I was a little happy, but also embarrassed. "Just kidding, I know it's for my own good. Baby, lift up a little," he coaxed. "I'll put my hand underneath." I sniffled and holding onto his shoulder did as he said. It seemed to get a little better. But there was something hard underneath, which was another kind of unfamiliar discomfort. I kept adjusting my position restlessly, but couldn't find a comfortable spot. So weird. Julian's breathing had become heavy at some point. His free hand pressed against my back, holding my writhing body still. "Don't move." After he said it, he might have realized his tone was a bit harsh, and added as an afterthought, "Good baby." I looked down at him. This position made me a little taller than him. His high-bridged nose was like the spine of a mountain, guiding my gaze downward. Finally, it landed on his lips, which were slightly parted as he breathed, like the gently vibrating wings of a butterfly resting on a flower. To be attracted to butterflies is a cat's nature, an undeniable, irreversible nature. I slowly leaned closer to him, our noses soon touching. He widened his eyes slightly. "Don't move," I mimicked his tone, with the sharp focus of a cat catching a butterfly, and announced very seriously, "I'm going to kiss you." "What is a kiss?" Julian used to kiss my face, my paws, my belly. I hadn't yet understood the meaning behind each type of kiss. I only knew that kissing between us was something that should be taken for granted. He was my human, he should let me kiss him. Without giving him the right to refuse, I held his shoulder and accurately captured those two lips. The moment our lips touched, sparks flew along the path the bugs had crawled over. The electric current shot into my brain, killing the bugs and frying me silly at the same time. I froze, not knowing what to do next, a bit awkward. Well then, I'll just lick him a little. Behind me, my tail made a grand, belated entrance. My attention was half distracted by it. Just as I was about to turn my head to look, my head was held from behind, forcing me to focus. Julian's hand, which was underneath me, moved down along the base of my tail, soothing the neglected tail. His lips, which were pressed against mine, began to suck gently. This butterfly I had caught began to struggle, not to escape, but to lure the enemy in deeper. I couldn't see his face clearly. I could only hear his muffled whisper amidst our intertwined breaths. "Bad cat." In the small stall, every sound was amplified. The world seemed to revert to how it was when I was a cat, everything before me becoming a blurry patch of color, spinning under the lights. Only when the kiss ended did everything become clear and bright again. Julian's hair was messy, sweat dripped from his nose, and his ears were so red they looked like they were about to bleed. The sight made my teeth itch again. After a short rest, I said, "Hey," and gleefully showed off to him. "Julian, I think I can control my tail now, really." His chin rubbed against my hair, and he praised me in a husky, smiling voice. "So amazing, baby." I was very proud, but also felt a little awkward. I shifted my body, wanting to get off his lap. But as soon as I moved, he sucked in a sharp breath. "What's wrong?" I stopped moving, asking nervously. Julian hissed, "My legs are numb. Don't move for a bit, let me recover." I was steeped in guilt, thinking, did I get too heavy as a human and crush him? I completely forgot that his legs had no feeling, so how could he feel them go numb? Julian's legs were numb, but his hands weren't. They would still occasionally rub my tail, which was terrifyingly good. A sudden thought struck me. I sat up straight and questioned him. "Is it because I didn't have a tail as a human that you didn't like me before? You were so cold to me when I didn't have a tail, and as soon as the tail appeared, you started calling me baby. Do you like me or the tail?" He was so scared, he immediately raised his hands in surrender. "No, I've never disliked you. He paused. "I just didn't know how to face you properly. You're a little cat. You don't understand anything." He smiled, a very gentle but heavy smile. Perhaps because it was mixed with many other things, it didn't seem happy. "But I'm different. I can't play dumb and deceive myself to escape. What if you get tired of being human and want to turn back into a cat? What if you get used to being human, but then discover there are so many people better than me in this world? That I took advantage of your innocence, used your dependence on me to trap you by my side, so that for now, you can only see me. When you finally realize that the feelings between people are different from the feelings between a person and a cat, but you're already tied down by my despicable methods, will you hate me then, baby? The world is vast. The world of humans and the world of cats are completely different. It's not just the color of the sky or the patterns on a butterfly. There's so much more you haven't experienced. How can I be so selfish? What was all that gibberish?" I really didn't understand. But I couldn't reveal my ignorance. I feigned understanding and nodded, then asked, "But why do you have to assume so many what-ifs?" Julian was taken aback. I didn't flinch, meeting his gaze directly. "A cat's world doesn't have so many what-ifs. We live one day at a time, being meticulously cared for in a home, living a life of food and comfort where you're too lazy to even bat at a toy. That's one day. Wandering outside, exposed to the elements, surviving by digging through trash and enduring hunger, that's also one day. Humans make all sorts of assumptions and get tangled up because you have choices. You have to weigh gains and losses. But our survival is based on instinct. Julian, my instinct is to be with you. Just like when I first saw you, I decided I wanted to keep you. It wasn't because you had a big house and could provide lots of canned food. Even if you had nothing, as long as you asked if I wanted to go home with you, I would have gone. Of course, I know there are many other great humans in the world, but I'm also just a very ordinary tabby cat, the kind you can find all over the streets. And you still chose me. You're my human. In my eyes, you're the best. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone. Even though I've become human, I'm still a cat at heart. I will always follow my cat instincts and love you. As a cat in a cat's way, as a person in a person's way. I finished my speech with a calm demeanor, but inside, my tail was wagging so hard I was giving myself a standing ovation. How am I so good with words? Who dares to call me an illiterate cat now? I'm practically a feline philosopher. Julian's eyes were exceptionally bright. At first glance, I thought it was the light reflecting in them, but on closer inspection, they were shimmering like water. A beat later, I realized it was tears. I promise you, I blinked in confusion. You promise what? I didn't ask for anything, but I had just established my persona as a wise and knowledgeable cat. I couldn't show weakness now. Besides, he was so strange. He wasn't happy when he smiled, but he was so happy when he cried. Whatever he was promising, as long as he was happy, so I nodded with dignified gratification. That's good. A reflection of me appeared in those bright eyes, my face, my eyes, getting closer and closer. He cupped my face and kissed me again. I retracted my tail, my mind happily planning things out. For example, if Julian let me play on my claw phone all night, I would agree to let him pet my tail. The pants I was wearing had been torn by my tail, so Julian sent a message for someone to bring a new pair. While we waited for the pants, it was as if he was possessed. He would constantly get close, nuzzling and pecking me with kisses every now and then. I wrinkled my face, getting a little impatient with all the kissing. As everyone knows, a cat can get close to a person whenever it wants, but a person cannot constantly cling to a cat. Just as I was about to tell him to show some restraint, my ears twitched. I heard the conversation of unfamiliar humans outside the stall. Did you see Julian at the party? Tusk, an old tree finally blooming. I thought he was such a proper person, but he couldn't even control himself in front of so many people. Julian, who had been pecking at my lips, froze, his gaze shooting sharply towards the source of the voice. The other person chuckled darkly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Do you think he wants to be celibate? His legs are crippled, he's powerless. Of course he has to put on a high and mighty act. He can't exactly crawl on the ground and beg for love, can he? But that little lover of his is a real looker, and he's willing to go all out, so shameless. Seducing a cripple in public just to latch onto Julian. He must be just as wild in bed. Hey, what do you think they do? Does Julian sit in his wheelchair and make the guy do all the work? Poor little beauty, having to put up with a gimp. The Sterling family has such a huge business, and it all falls into the hands of a cripple. If it weren't for his good luck, he was abandoned, and so down on his luck anyone could step on him. But then he somehow outlived his entire family, and in the end, I didn't hear the rest of it very clearly. Julian raised his hand and covered my ears. I saw him mouth words to me. With my hearing, I could have heard clearly, but I suddenly seemed to not understand human language anymore. It took me a moment to realize he was saying, "Don't be angry, baby." I only then realized I was trembling. Not like before from discomfort, but this time from extreme anger. So angry my nose felt stuffy. I sniffled, but there was nothing wrong. I didn't know why it was blocked like I was sick. If only Julian could turn into a cat. I could carry him back to Moon Street and protect him safely in my territory. I was the toughest top cat on Moon Street. No one could get past me to hurt him. It wouldn't matter if he couldn't walk. I took care of Smudge. I'm very experienced. One cat can support a family. It wouldn't matter if he wasn't popular with other cats. Cats don't get sad about not having companions. He would only need me. I broke free from his embrace, dodged his attempt to grab me, and opened the door, rushing out. The two men talking by the sinks obviously didn't expect someone to burst out of a stall. I raised my fist and gave each of them a punch as a greeting. Not having sharp claws did affect my performance a bit, but that was okay. These two looked weak, not even as strong as Julian. One punch, one down. Did they really think the Moon Street cat boss was a vegetarian? I could have bitten them, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I resorted to pulling hair, slapping faces, kicking and punching, all while scolding them. Don't you know Julian is under my protection? You dare to mess with my human. I'll beat you into rat chip crumbs. After retiring from the streets and washing my paws of underworld conflict, I had been a well-behaved cat. The most intense exercise I got was climbing a tree or wrecking the house. This long overdue brawl was surprisingly refreshing and satisfying. I beat them until they couldn't even fight back, their faces bruised and swollen, unable to speak clearly, just wailing and trembling. I remembered they had called me feisty earlier. I immediately gave each of them another slap across the face with both hands. You knew I was full of fight and you still provoked me. Were you doing it on purpose? I learned a term from watching videos on my claw phone. Just cause, if someone came to catch me and stew me with oranges, I would say these two kept provoking me. What could a simple, honest cat do wrong? I was forced into it. A cornered dog will jump a wall, a desperate rabbit will bite, so it's only natural for a cornered cat to throw a few punches. The sound of wheels rolling came from behind me. My raised fist froze. The surging emotions quickly turned to ice, my heart skipping a beat. I looked at the two disheveled people beneath me, and a sprout of fear and guilt finally crept into my heart. Most of my understanding of human society came from Smudge. He had once warned me gravely, if one day you decide to keep a human, you must hide your wildness. In human eyes, a cat that shows a high degree of aggression towards people, no matter how well behaved it usually is, will be re-evaluated for whether it should be released back into the wild. When you decide to live with a human, you have to make a choice. Whether to trade your sense of security for his. I used to scoff at his words. To us cats who grew up in the wild, giving up our aggression was a death sentence. I was unwilling to trade the sharp fangs and claws and fierce wildness that had protected me for so long for a human's unguaranteed promise. But after Julian took me home, I discovered that I didn't actually have to make a choice, because protecting him from harm had naturally, without any need for emphasis, become another instinct of mine. Not for warmth and shelter, but simply because he was my human, because he was Julian. For a moment, I didn't dare to bring my fist down again, nor did I dare to turn around and look at him, afraid of him detecting any hint of untamable wildness in me. And I was afraid of catching a look of fear or disappointment in his eyes. A suit jacket was draped over my waist. It covered the hole that I had completely forgotten about. One of the men I had beaten to the ground saw Julian, his eyes widening, and he pointed at me, shouting incoherently. The next moment, his finger was run over by a wheel, the bone crushed. The filthy curses stopped abruptly, and a few seconds later, erupted into a piercing scream. My fist was clasped in someone's palm. My fingers went limp, and I let him pull my hand over, taking out a handkerchief from who knows where and wiping it carefully. I slowly tilted my head, cautiously peeking at his expression. The lips that had been affectionately nuzzling mine just moments ago were now pressed into a tight, displeased line. After wiping my hand, he didn't let go, holding it tightly. Very tightly, it hurt a little. I couldn't help but call out his name, Julian. Only then did he exhale, loosening his grip, but he still didn't let go, as if he was afraid I would run away again if he did. I didn't know what to do, so I instinctively resorted to my cat-like ways, getting closer to him, wanting to kiss his unhappy lips to appease him. He tilted his head back, avoiding it, leaving me frozen in my pose, staring at him blankly. "Let's go home first," he said in a low voice. His words weren't harsh, but they offered no comfort. I was still filled with unease, my mind racing. Julian seemed to be angry that I had attacked humans after all. Perhaps he was re-evaluating me right now. And the conclusion was that I could no longer be close to him. The subordinate who brought the pants stayed behind to clean up the mess. Julian pulled me straight home. Arthur was waiting at the door, greeting us with a smile. "Why are you back so early, Arthur?" Julian said coldly. "Didn't I tell you not to let him out casually? And you specifically sent him to a crowded place." Arthur was stunned, his gaze shifting uneasily between the two of us. "Did something happen?" Although I often called him mean old butler, I actually knew that Julian had no other relatives and considered Arthur, who had taken care of him for so many years, as his family. Now, because I had done something wrong, he was even being harsh with Arthur. My sinking heart finally plunged into an icy pool, a chilling sensation creeping through me. After the panic, anger and grievance also began to surface. I forcefully shook off Julian's hand. "You might as well just say you'll lock me in a cage and never let me interact with anyone else." With that, I ran upstairs without looking back and stormed into my room. I used to think this room was empty and boring. Soon I might not even have a cage to live in. Since I started sneaking into the next room to sleep every night, this room had been unoccupied for a long time. The sheets and blanket were cold and damp, and crawling under them felt like my fur was wet and heavy. I curled up inside, forming a small hill. I missed my old cat bed. It was fluffy inside, not cold at all. My favorite stuffed fish hung from the outside. Julian liked to flick it with his finger, the little fish's tail swaying, luring me out. If I had to leave, I would take the cat bed with me. He shouldn't be that petty. With a bed, even if a cat lived alone outside, it wouldn't be completely considered a stray, right? There was a knock on the door. I guessed who it was and didn't make a sound. A few seconds later, someone pushed the door open and entered the room. "Baby." I pulled the blanket tighter, ignoring him. I didn't expect his next sentence to be, "Who plays hide and seek and leaves their tail sticking out?" I instinctively reached behind me and of course felt nothing. "You lied to me." I threw off the blanket and sat up, even angrier. The corners of Julian's mouth twitched a couple of times. He couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. He was happy now, but just a moment ago his face was as flat as if someone owed him 100 treat sticks, and he dodged my kiss. He quickly stopped laughing. His lips were still smiling, but his pupils contracted in alarm, making him look a little comical. I wiped my face haphazardly, my hand coming away wet and cold. Since becoming human, I had cried in front of him several times. If I could control it, I wouldn't. Tears and overly abundant emotions scared me, making me feel like I was becoming more human. I hadn't lied to Julian. I really did always act on instinct and didn't care much for gains or losses. So even during the time he distanced himself from me, I never regretted it. But now I realized that I wasn't completely unaffected. I had some emotions that a cat couldn't understand. That's right. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Having a human body and still being able to live a carefree life as a cat. I had no experience with tears. I didn't understand why the more I wiped, the more they came. I could only rub harder, making my face red. Julian grabbed my wrists. He was so frantic he almost fell onto the bed. "You're mad at me, be mad at me. Don't make yourself suffer." He took my hands and hit his own face with them. "I was wrong, baby. I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you for hitting them. What are those two worth? I was just scared. There were two of them. What if they hurt you? What if you got emotional and your tail came out and someone with bad intentions saw it? I was being ungrateful. I know I shouldn't have been angry. I've already apologized to Arthur. I shouldn't have taken out my anger at my own powerlessness on you both. I couldn't hold on to you," he said. "This time was like this. What about next time? What if you're in danger and I can't save you or protect you in time, and I even end up being a burden to you?" I was angry at myself. They weren't wrong. Without my family background, someone like me, I didn't want to hear him talk like that. "I'm sleepy," he quickly said. "Okay, let's go back." I had already turned my back to him and lain down. Julian was quiet for a moment, then he quietly lifted a corner of the blanket and slowly moved next to me. He tentatively reached out to hug me. When I didn't reject him, he let out a sigh of relief. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice muffled. "I'm not usually aggressive. It's just that those two were so mean, saying things like that about you. I couldn't help it." "I know," Julian said. "Actually, it's okay to be a little fierce. You're even cute when you hiss. You have no idea, when I saw you fighting for me, my heart was beating so fast. Our baby, as a cat, is the most majestic little cat. As a person, when you fight, you're the most heroic one." After a long hesitation, he asked tentatively, in a soft voice, "Baby, are we okay now?" I was asleep and didn't give him an answer. I dreamed of Julian again. A naked Julian. Leaning against the soft headboard, he smiled at me with a raised eyebrow. In the dream, I was still angry. I pounced on him furiously, straddling him. My tail was out, wrapped tightly around his waist. The dream was very chaotic. Sometimes I would turn back into a cat and knead his chest, my claws leaving bloody scratches on his muscles. Sometimes I would be in my human form, entangled with him, as if we were going to destroy each other. In the final scene, I was strangling him, as if holding prey by the throat, and leaned in to bite. The act was too vicious. I didn't dare to dream the next step. I woke myself up in fear. I opened my eyes to find the nightmare had become reality. I was on top of Julian, my sharp teeth pressed against the back of his neck. If I hadn't woken up in time, I might have bitten down. I jolted. The boiling blood from the dream quickly cooled, and my numb brain began to work slowly. I stared blankly at the red marks and a faint bite mark on his neck that I had made, not deep, but very glaring. I remembered the scene in my dream where I had savagely attacked Julian, and I remembered him looking at me, his reddened eyes filled with forbearance and pain. When I was hurting him, he was still calling me baby, holding my waist, indulging my violent behavior. I didn't understand why this was happening, why I had those terrible thoughts, wanting to bury my teeth in his body, wanting to leave my unique marks on him. Had I gotten into a fight and my wildness was truly awakened, giving me the desire to attack people, just before I went to sleep, I had promised him that I was good, that I wouldn't be aggressive. My subconscious told me that this desire was uncontrollable, and if not satisfied, it would only grow until it completely erupted. Even if he could accept it, I was no longer suitable to stay by a human's side. I decided to release myself back into the wild on Julian's behalf. Before I left, I thoughtfully tucked Julian in, carefully straightening his open collar. I was certainly at fault, but was Julian completely blameless for not knowing how to protect himself? I deliberately found a huge hiking backpack, planning to pack all the remaining cat food, canned food, and snacks in the house. Even if I couldn't eat them now that I was human, I would never let the next cat have them. I just didn't expect that Julian had prepared a whole room full of food just to feed one cat. The cans were stacked higher than my human form. I stood in the room in a daze for a while, then picked out a few of my favorite kinds, filled the bag, and left. So in the dead of night, with a mountain of luggage on my back, my precious claw phone in my pocket, and my old cat bed, which I had snuck into Arthur's room to retrieve, in my hand, I climbed the wall and ran away. Luckily, I was extremely good at climbing. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to get out of this house. I walked all night, and before the moon went off duty, I returned to my moon street. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, dropped my backpack on the ground with a thud, and opened it, generously calling out to my former cat underlings. Your boss has returned in glory. Pairs of cat eyes lit up in the quiet alley, and dozens of cats of various colors ran towards me. For cat's sake, that smell, it's the old boss. How did you become a person? Boss, where did you strike it rich? You brought back so much food. This little brother worships you. Boss, Brutus said you went to the city to do improper things to make a living. Is that true? Eat more, meow less. I opened the cans and cat food for them. A pile of fur balls gathered on the ground, affectionately rubbing against my feet. If I wasn't afraid of ruining my only pair of pants, I really wanted to let my tail out and greet every one of them with a good rub. When I saw Brutus trying to blend in, my eyes narrowed, and I stuck out my foot to block him. He jumped back in fright, then tried to act tough, looking up at me. What's so stingy? Now, not only was I 10 times his size, but my state of mind was also beyond the comprehension of such a common cat. I magnanimously twisted, patted his head, and shoved a bag of extremely smelly sea fish-flavored cat food in his face. HMPH, this one tastes the worst. I saved it just for him. The first time I tried it, I threw up so hard I almost made Julian cry. He thought he had bought poisoned cat food. The cats on the ground were devouring their food when a clear meow came from above. Little brother. I looked up and saw a beautiful and elegant calico cat sitting on the wall. She put down the small cloth bag she was carrying and greeted me with a reserved air. My eyes lit up and I happily walked over to her. Roxy. Roxy was the top cat of the neighboring Dawn Street, a very tough big sister among cats. She was very righteous and we had a good relationship. Rumor had it that Roxy's real name was Daisy, but she denied it, so very few cats dared to call her that to her face. Roxy looked me up and down. Little brother, you've become a person. Yeah. I spun around in front of her, showing off my human body. Seeing that she was also carrying a bundle, as if she was going on a long journey, I asked her where she was going. Roxy sighed worriedly and explained with some trouble, I'm going to inherit a human. Huh, I was surprised. Aren't you from a line of purebred stray cats for 3 generations? Stray cats also have pedigrees. My grandmother had kept a human, so I was a mixed blood. Roxy was considered the purest of bloodlines. It's a long story, she said. I'm actually very confused myself. I'll tell you when I figure it all out. Then come have something to eat, I invited her sincerely. I brought a lot of food. She hesitated for a moment, then licked her fur and said, Thank you, just give me a can. I was just worrying about what to bring as a meeting gift for my little inheritance. I gave her 3 cans. She sniffed my hand and suddenly asked seriously, Little brother, tell me the truth. Did you just run away from a human's house? Like a human schoolboy caught skipping class, I stammered and admitted, Why yes. Her tail flicked. Did this human abandon you? Not exactly. Her voice became even sterner. So you abandoned the human. Put like that, I suddenly felt guilty. I lowered my head to hide my face. Not really. I just feel like I can't stay by his side anymore. We're. Under her scrutinizing gaze, I racked my brain and came up with a word I had seen in some TV show. Amicably separated. Yes, we're amicably separated. Roxy's knowledge base obviously couldn't keep up. What does that mean? I explained. It means we separated peacefully. But you're a person now. You can communicate with him, Roxy asked. Have you tried to understand his thoughts? I didn't say anything. I didn't dare. If I ran away now, Julian's impression of me wouldn't be so bad. But if he found out I wanted to bite him, to scratch him and hurt him, even if he didn't kick me out, he wouldn't like me as much anymore. Roxy saw through me and sighed. I don't really understand humans either, but I think you should find out what he thinks before you make a decision. She said very seriously, just like I promised to take care of my little inheritance, I will definitely take good care of her. Even though I haven't even met her yet, our relationship is already established. She is my human. Unless she tells me herself that she doesn't like me and doesn't need me, only then will I leave or find another feline guardian for her. Little brother, a cat abandoned by humans, has a hard time surviving in the wild. The reverse is also true. If your human isn't what you think, he will be very sad. The sun came to take over. Roxy said goodbye to me and, stepping on the morning light, went to find her little inheritance. I found a relatively clean, shady spot, put down my cat bed, and sat on it, lost in thought. After a long comparison, I chose a human word that best expressed my current mood. It was called lost. I couldn't be a good person, and I couldn't turn back into a cat. Even if Moon Street still accepted me, I couldn't stay here forever as a homeless person. Julian said the world is vast, and the world of humans and cats are completely different. But in this vast world, there was no place to put my bed. Since it had come to this, I might as well play on my claw phone. I took out my claw phone and pressed it for a long time before it lit up. Almost as soon as the screen turned on, the device began to vibrate like crazy. I fumbled with it for a while before a voice came through. The breathing on the other end was rapid, but the tone when he called my name was very cautious. Baby, I couldn't help but rub my ears. The voice coming from the claw phone sounded different from Julian's usual voice. I observed it cautiously for a long time, and only after he called out again did I respond. It's me. Where are you now? Why did you leave home by yourself? Are you lost and can't find your way back? Wait for me, I'll be right. Hearing his voice, I realized I missed him a little, so I listened quietly for a while before interrupting him seriously. Julian, I'm not lost. I've come home. The breathing on the other end hitched. The claw phone sound distortion was terrible. The sound of the wind on his end was twisted until it sounded like someone crying. The wind stopped and his voice disappeared with it. I held the calling posture, and after confirming there was no more sound, I belatedly realized the claw phone had gone on strike. This time, no matter how much I pressed it, it wouldn't light up again. I stared blankly at the dark screen and said dejectedly, Julian, I broke the claw phone. Julian always had a way to fix things, but he was no longer my human. I had brought enough food to sustain the entire street of stray cats for several days. I was able to reclaim my position as the top cat without a fight. Brutus was so angry he cursed me for being a cat with a sinister heart, using bribery to take shortcuts. Every cat that passed me had to bow its head and rub against me as a sign of respect. Among them was a skinny blue cat who had been circling me several times, thinking I hadn't noticed. I didn't have a strong impression of him because he was a complete cat version of Julian, a loner even among the already solitary cats, not one for socializing. I thought his unusual behavior might mean he had a favor to ask, so I called out to him. Boss, he addressed me in a very unfamiliar tone, squatting down and staring at me with his round cat eyes, which were filled with longing. Can you pet me? What kind of request was that? I was puzzled, but I didn't refuse. I reached out and petted his head, checking for fleas at the same time. Thank you, he rubbed against my palm. After my grandma died, no one has petted me for a long time. Even though you're not a real human, it feels the same. He asked me, they said you were keeping a human before. What about your human? Did he die too? My mouth denied it before my brain could even process the thought. I couldn't accept Julian being associated with that word in any way, even just by being mentioned. The blue cat, his wish fulfilled, left me frozen in place, his last words echoing in my mind. That's great. I miss my human too, but I'll never see her again. I covered my nose, bewildered by the inexplicable sourness that appeared again. Just then the oldest cat on Moon Street, Gramps, came over, sniffed me carefully, and chuckled knowingly. Little boss, you've found a she-cat you like, have you? I was so startled my tail almost popped out. What she-cat? I stammered, denying it. There's no such thing, Gramps' whiskers twitched. HMPH, don't think you can hide it from me. I've lived for almost 20 years. I've dated more she-cats than you've caught mice. One sniff of you and I can tell you've just been in heat. It's stronger than spring. In heat, I wasn't a little kitten. I knew what that meant, but my face turned shades of green, white, and red. You smelled wrong, how could it be heat? Gramps' eyes widened in anger. How could it not be? Just tell me, has your body been acting strange lately? Well, yes, but how could I be in heat for a human? And a man at that. Now that he mentioned it, I couldn't help but recall the dream, replaying the strange physical reactions I had when I was with Julian. I wanted to bite him, kiss him, get close to him, wrap my tail around him, but it wasn't the same feeling I had for a she-cat. I seemed to want him to bite me, kiss me, touch me. I wanted to possess him, all to myself. Just like in the dream, when I was straddling him, he held my waist with his hands, his eyes only on me. I shivered, my expression becoming a little strange, mixed with a hint of grief and indignation. It must be because the mean old butler was always nagging about getting me neutered, making me not like a normal tomcat. Then Gramps said, "You've become a person, so shouldn't you be in heat for a person?" I was at a loss for words. It seemed to make sense. I don't know, I mumbled softly. I thought I was just going feral and wanted to attack him. He shook his head and sighed. I've said it before, education, education. Even if we're stray cats, we can't be behind in our education. Back then, none of you kittens would listen to me. You went to the charity class once and then refused to go again. You've grown into a bunch of little illiterates who can't even tell when you're in heat, but your situation is indeed very special. After all, you might not find one cat in 10,000 who can turn into a person like you. The charity class probably wouldn't have mentioned it. I rubbed my hands nervously and asked humbly, "Then what should I do?" Gramps paced back and forth, then asked me, "Do you still remember why you wanted to become a person in the first place?" I thought back carefully. To be Julian's kept person, that didn't seem right. Arthur said being kept was an improper relationship. In the end, it was because I didn't want him to be so lonely. I pressed the back of my hand against my cheek. It felt scorching hot. I retorted in a low voice, "But he's a man and I'm a tomcat." Gramps gave me a look of disdain, as if to say, "How unenlightened. What era are we in? How can you young people still be so old-fashioned?" He educated me. "Tomcats can like tomcats too, huh?" I was dumb-cat-founded. "Yeah, it's not a big deal. Some cats even fall in love with mice." "What's so strange about that?" Gramps leaned in closer and sniffed me. I was so embarrassed I was scratching the ground with my claws, barely managing not to run away. "How far have you two gone?" I let him call me baby, hold me while we sleep, rub my tail. I kissed him, and I pretended to be dreaming and bit his neck. "Meow what?" He was shocked. "You've done all that, and you still didn't realize you were in heat. You went into heat for him, and then just ran away and left him." "You heartbreaker," he condemned me gravely. I sulked, but he might not feel the same way. Julian probably just wanted me to turn back into a cat. "No excuses," Gramps said. "He's a grown man." "Even if you don't understand, how could he not? He accepted all of those behaviors. He must be willing to mate with you. You have to go back and take responsibility," he said decisively. "Otherwise, if this gets out, how are the other cats on Moon Street supposed to find a partner? Do you think the other experienced cats can't smell it? They're just too polite to say it to your face. They're definitely meowing about it behind your back. In a little while, every cat in the neighborhood will know that the top cat of Moon Street is a heartbreaker who goes into heat for a human and then absconds with the canned food." I sat on my cat bed, poking the little stuffed fish with my finger, thinking for a long time. I didn't really care about my reputation. Some cats could date 7 or 8 at a time without feeling guilty. What was I so flustered about? I knew in my heart that Gramps was deliberately saying those things because he saw that I wanted to see him. I shot up to my feet, having made a decision. I was going back to the estate, back to Julian's side. I couldn't just run away irresponsibly. I had to at least ask him what he thought. If he wasn't willing to accept it, then I would choose to leave. But just as I had arranged the remaining food and promised to come back and visit everyone, a tortoiseshell cat sister suddenly rushed towards me, meowing urgently. "Boss, save my child." I looked up in the direction she indicated. Inside the wall, there was a tree so tall you could barely see the top. A black kitten was trembling on a branch in the middle, crying for help. I don't know how it climbed so high. His mother was so anxious she started speaking in her dialect. Silly little kitten. Now, being the tallest one here, I had become the most suitable rescuer. I immediately put down my backpack again, stretched my arms and legs, and leaped onto the wall. I jumped onto the top of the wall, then climbed up the tree trunk until I reached the kitten. I grabbed it in my hand and let out a sigh of relief. The kitten was excitedly meowing. "Boss, you're so amazing, can you take me higher?" I suddenly started to understand how tired Julian must have felt seeing me climb trees. Good thing Julian and I couldn't have kittens. That would be a real hassle. I first handed the little cat to the tortoiseshell's sister, who was waiting anxiously on the wall, and enjoyed watching the little black cat get beaten into a charcoal briquette. When I had had enough of the show and was about to jump down myself, a voice that couldn't be more familiar sounded from below the wall. "Baby." I looked down in astonishment and saw Julian sitting in his big wheels, looking completely disheveled. He was still in his pajamas, his hair a mess, and his eyes red-rimmed. His face was pale as he stared at me, his gaze unwavering, as if he was afraid I would disappear again if he blinked. He forced a smile, his voice trembling slightly as he asked me, "Baby, are you abandoning me?" I was stunned. Before I could react, Brutus jumped out first, pacing back and forth beside Julian with his tail held high, shouting, come and see, the cat world has produced an unparalleled heartbreaker. The abandoned human has even come to our territory." I wanted to dig the food I had fed him out of his stomach. What kind of cat was he before I could make a move? Julian quickly wheeled himself away from him, proving his innocence. "Baby, I didn't let him get close to me." He paused, then said with some grievance, "If you don't want me, I'll have to be a wild human without a cat for the rest of my life." "Are you lame or are you blind?" Brutus, as if mortally insulted, screamed in a rage. "Am I not much more handsome than this stupid tabby, and who's so desperate to keep you stinky humans anyway?" Even though I knew humans couldn't understand meows, when I heard him say, "lame," my face darkened. I chased Brutus until he disappeared down the street before I stopped. When I turned back, I saw Julian staring in the direction he had fled, his face full of alarm. "Baby, is that your good cat friend?" He spoke in a forced, magnanimous tone. "You two are so close. You didn't even care about me, you just ran after him. Stop talking, it's disgusting." I walked back to Julian's side and stood there, thinking for a moment before asking, "How did you find me? You said you were going back." He deliberately avoided the word home. I could only think of this place, the place where I first met you and took you home. I corrected him. "I found you." He smoothly rephrased it, then hesitated for a moment before admitting, "And I installed a locator in your phone." "I didn't mean to monitor you, I just had to make sure you were safe." I was enlightened. The square claw phone was a spy. I didn't dwell on it, and choosing my words carefully, said to him, "There was something I said before that was wrong." Julian was obviously nervous. "Which part?" I said that I'm still a cat at heart, that I'll always follow my cat instincts, don't cry yet. I don't know which word triggered him, but he looked like he was about to be crushed by my words. "How can you say it was wrong? I took it seriously," Julian said, his voice choked with sobs. "You were the one who said you would always be with me. I already promised you. Only then did I realize that his 'I promise you' was in response to that. Let me finish first." He didn't dare to speak anymore, just holding back, his nose turning red from sniffling, looking so pitiful. I took a deep breath. I don't know if I can ever turn back into a cat. Maybe I never will. When I told you before that I was still a cat at heart, it was because at that time, I really did still see myself as a cat, just in a human body. When I said I would be with you, it was as a cat. Julian's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but he ultimately held back. "But now I realize that I can't just be a cat in front of you anymore. If you only want the old Sunny back, I'm sorry, I can't go home with you. If you can completely accept me as I am now, you also have to accept that I have mating desires for you." Julian was stunned, as if he had been shocked silly by my outrageous statement. I pressed my lips together and continued, "I will go into heat for you, want to scratch you, bite you, possess you, and do spring things with you. I know this is hard to accept all at once. I accept." He couldn't hold it in any longer, so excited he almost fell out of his wheelchair. "No." I quickly squatted down to support him. "If you can accept it, why are you crying?" Julian's tears were like a bursting dam, falling onto the back of my hand one by one. "I'm sorry," he cried uncontrollably. "I made you say all of this first." I looked at the water stains on my hand and was no longer so afraid of human tears. I made a mental note. Humans also cry out of happiness. "It's okay," I said. "Cats are very brave. So it's okay if humans are a little slow, a little timid, don't know how to love themselves properly, and always assume so many unnecessary what-ifs. A cat can always find a way, just like how I used to lure him all over the estate to find me every day." Julian's eyes were moist, bright after the rain. Still on Moon Street, he asked the same question he had asked all those years ago. "My bravest little cat in the world, do you want to come home with me now?" I pretended to think. "If you help me catch a butterfly, I'll agree." He didn't take it as an offensive request for someone who couldn't walk. He straightened his back and promised solemnly, "I will definitely catch one." I stood up, leaned over the armrests, and captured his lips. "Caught one," the end.